Thanks, Callan. Alan, this is the third time we've had the summit and the panel, and you talked about losing sleep last night because you were thanking John Marble and doing the introduction this morning, knowing I was coming on after that panel and how what it's added to the program each year. I certainly lost sleep following you 6 amazing young adults. So Autism CRC is very pleased for the third time, along with DXC this year, to have presented the Autism at Work Summit here in Australia. And we are thankful to NAB for joining us in presenting this year. For those of you that don't know, the Autism CRC is actually the world's first national collaboration between government, research sector and industry focusing on autism, delivering research and research translation right across the lifespan. Our vision at Autism CRC is to see autistic people empowered to discover and use their diverse strengths and interests. And there are few things that are more empowering of a sense of self-worth, independence, and health and well-being than to be gainfully employed. So we are very proud to continue our association with the Autism at Work Summit and the work that we do in the area. John Marble started this morning on a low and what he described as the miserable state of autism. And it is a miserable state, as he described, with the numbers in the US, and it's a miserable state for autism employment in Australia still. Autistic people have 6 times the rate of unemployment of the general population. Workforce participation amongst the autistic population is about 2/3 of that in disability in general and less than half for the general population. And remember that workforce participation means you get 2 hours of work or more a week. But hold on, we've just had a day where we've celebrated all the great things about autism employment, neurodiversity employment programs, highlighted at the end by what we've seen with as I said, the 6 amazing young adults. And I'd like to thank you all again for sharing your stories and your experiences and what it's meant for you. So can you join me again in just thanking the panel, because I'm going to do something that I know you're not supposed to do, but Kirsty Richards at Sunpork has said I'm able to do this. Daniel, can you just stand up for a second? You met Daniel Slavin there earlier, and Daniel sort of told you the story that he had lived in Melbourne all his life with his mum, and he sort of liked the idea of working with young pigs. It was one of his interests. Don't know how it came about. So he put himself on a plane. He flew from Melbourne to Brisbane. He got on a bus at Brisbane on his own, and he went to Dalby. If any of you have been to Dalby in central southeast Queensland, it's not a very big place, and the farm's outside Dalby by about half an hour. And he went and worked there. And he described the challenges and so on, and he's gone on and been a very valuable member of the workforce. You don't know this, Daniel. Sunpork, great pork, by the way. Australia's best pork producer, Australia, New Zealand. Fantastic. Paddock to plate, they do the whole lot. They employ over 1,200 people in Australia and New Zealand across their farms, their abattoirs, production facilities and so on. And Daniel, an email came through to Kirsty earlier today, and I can announce that you're the 2019 Sunpork Trainee of the Year for excellence and dedication to training. You can sit down now, mate. No, that's just outstanding. As are all the stories that we have heard over the years and we will continue to hear. But as I said, there's this miserable state, as John described it, and we've heard these wonderful stories. We've also heard that it's not just about what it's doing for the individuals, it's that through the application of an autism lens to our employment practices, as we've heard through various discussions today, that we're now tapping into identifying and tapping into the strengths and skills of not only the neurodiverse employees, but our entire workforce. There was a Harvard Business Review paper a couple of years ago that highlighted that in studies across organisations in the US. We're focusing on the person and taking the strengths-based approach that Lawrence Fung talked about in his presentation. And it's just the right thing to do. It's the sensible thing to do. So what we're getting out of this is better defined, more accessible, more sensible practices, policies and work environments that include better outcomes for all our employees, including, as we saw, the focus on mental health that's now happening in workplaces as a result of, again, this lens being applied through the autism employment programs. We've seen more innovation in products and practices and so on. We're getting phrases we used this morning, energised workplaces. We're getting better leaders and managers as a result of these programs. As Tracy Edwards from NAB said this morning in the breakfast, they do this because it's good business practice and it's the right thing to do. So why do we still have the gap, given all of those things? Well, it's quite simple, actually. We're talking about cultural and organisational change on a massive scale. And these things take time. They take demonstrated evidence to convince others to come on board, and they take leadership. We're still in our early days, but everyone in this room is helping to provide that leadership through both thought and practice. And I'd encourage you to do more, to go out and tell the story within your organisations. When you leave one organisation to go to another, tell the story there as well. And this is how we continue this cultural change, important cultural change. Tracy also said this morning, NAB's now, as you heard, launched their program. They're sponsoring and presenting this event with us. And she came to it because she was at a presentation a couple of years ago that Matt Ormiston and Andrew Baird gave about the ANZ program. So that's how these things happen. This is the third of the summits, and this year we've got over 100 more people than last year. So again, hopefully that's a sign of the growing interest. The discussions have matured as the programs and the experience of people involved in those programs mature. A third of the people are here from organisations that have been here before, and it's a demonstration that those organisations are going deeper with the programs. And we've got 2/3 who have not attended before, which is demonstrating that wider interest. To those who are starting out, and there's been lots of questions from the floor during today saying, well, you know, I'm not a big organisation, we're this and whatever, how do we start and so on, and the answer has been, just do it. I think that's absolutely what you do. But a couple of things. Recognise that there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of resources available from others in the room, and you can get those on websites. Andrew already talked about one this morning. There's a community of practice that's being supported online through Autism CRC. There's resources available from Cornell and so on. Make use of those, make use of the expertise and the experience of the people in the room, because they will give, just as Matt Ormiston and Andrew Baird did for NAB. You need an executive sponsor. That's been clear in all the examples that we've got. And you need an internal champion like a Kirsty Richards at Sunpork or a Tracy Edwards at NAB. They're important. And one last absolutely critical thing. As you develop these programs and as you review them, make sure that you co-produce them with the autistic community. As John Marble said this morning, if you don't do that, you will build false assumption on false assumption, and that will lead to a waste of time, money, and emotional capital. So, a few thanks. Firstly to Michael Fieldhouse and DXC, and to Tracy at NAB for co-presenting with us this year. Thank you to you and your teams and your organisations. To the other sponsors in SAP, ANZ and Untapped. To our speakers, to all of you for giving your time, thought and preparation, we thank you greatly. To John Marble and Lawrence Fung, who've travelled across the pond to come and lend us the benefit of their experience. To Callan, where is he? Once again, great MC. Thank you, Callan, for guiding us through the day and keeping us on time. And to the many involved in the organisation of the event, There were lots of people in the organising committee, I'm told. It sort of went like this in size over time, but in particular to Leslie Richardson-Winfer, Callan Hanley, Michelle Elliott, Andrew Eddy, Colin Howe, Anthony Peck, Natalie Fong, Wojciech Nadaszowski and Kelly Jackson. Thank you for all your work in pulling this together. So this year's theme was transition to a new workforce. And we've talked about other transitions in life and so on, and talked about the cultural change just then. So we're all part of a transition, and hopefully we're transitioning to what I think are our goals. And they're twofold. One, they are, as Andrew Baird said this morning, when we get to the point when we actually don't need formalised employment programs for neurodiversity, it's just part of what we do. And then the second goal is when autistic people are able to proudly identify as being autistic without those moments of fear that John Marble experienced and described this morning in his meeting in the White House mess, and employers similarly respond as his director did. Fantastic. What a great asset to the team. Thanks, and travel safely home.